biggest telecommunications company in New Zealand. I'm a strategic trusted security advisor for our customers within Aotearoa. I have specialized knowledge in SOC, SIM, XDR, incident response, compliance, and privacy. And I'm a volunteer at Spark Women in Tech. It's a program that we have at Spark within my company where we empower and inspire each other and support each other within the tech community. I'm also a podcast host at Living and Breathing Technology and a winner of iSense Awards as well as Women in Security Awards in 2022. I'm passionate about learning and sharing my knowledge in cybersecurity, and I'm very excited to talk about incident response and why is it so important to have incident response which is effective in your organization, and how to actually prepare for it. How do we actually create incident response? Now, moving on, let's talk about what is incident response. I want you to have a think and put in the answers in the chat. What do you think is incident response? And let's step back a moment and think about what is incident and what is event, as the caption says here. So, do you think is password reset an incident response, or is it a service request, an event? Well, I'm not seeing the chat right now, but I'm sure you know the differentiation between the incident or event. But if you don't know, that's also all right. So incident is when an unauthorized individual is requesting to reset a password. However, an event could be an authorized individual trying to sign in but is not able to sign in. So that could be an event, but incident is when there's something which is unusual going on. So that is how it differentiates between an event and an incident. um, so why do we need incident response? Because you detect faster. It is the effort where you identify an attack, minimize its effects, contain damage, and remediate the cause to reduce the risk of future incidents. So, what does that mean? That once you identify the attack, you want to analyze it, you want to contain it, and you need to have a plan in place to understand what to do next. And that's where incident response comes into play, to contain the damage that the attack might have in your organization. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop it into the chat, and I can come back to it once we do the Q&A. Now, why do you think incident response plan is so important? Well, here, here the doc says, I have no idea what I'm doing. That's correct. When you have no idea what you're doing, when you don't know that what would be your next step. So working in SOC, I had this experience wherein if we do not have, an incident response plan in place which is structured enough, which has clarity, which is clear, which has information that we require in this form of steps, we don't understand what to look for, how to look for, and what resources to use. And what if I told you that incident response is not magic? Yes, so incident response is not magic. You can create that in your organization, but there are various steps you would have to take in order to create an incident response. Um, so, as you know, cyber incidents are not just technical problems; they are business problems. And when I say that is because when an incident happens, you feel like, oh, I need to use these tools, I need to do that to contain the effect of the incident. But why are we doing this? To cause minimum disruption to the business. And in order, incident response could be a pre-plan or a manual procedure for you in the knowledge base. But then in order to apply it, there are so many components that you would have to look at. You would have to look at having visibility to your assets, to your critical assets that you're monitoring. You would have to have a visibility of the logs that you want to monitor and identify and identify and attack. And the sooner you identify and mitigate, the less damage that it will cause. So, incident response planning is important because it outlines how to minimize the duration and damage of security incidents. Um, and it could be done by identifying the right stakeholders. So, for example, if there is a DDoS attack happening and you have DDoS scrubbing in place, but you're trying to drop the packets and it's working, but still you're seeing that there's large bandwidth coming in and still it's not working. You would have to speak to network and infrastructure people to maybe segment that network and understand what sort of business impact it might have. So identifying those stakeholders and having that an incident response plan is quite important, because then you know whom to reach out to, when to reach out to, and when to flag the issues. And it could also help you in the digital forensics, improves recovery time, and reduces negative publicity and customer churn. So what does that mean? When we talk about customer churn or reduces negative publicity for an organization, I'll talk about it more in the next slides. But if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in into the chat. So, how is it used? First of all, it says to support the organization's broader mission. Now, when I say to support organization's broader mission, what do you and what do you understand by it? Does it does it say that we need to have, we need to support organizations' broader mission and vision in terms of where they are going? No. So suppose the organization wants to give or have their services 24 by 7 and want to provide customer service 24 by 7 to its customers. So they would not work well if they have like disruption of even a minute. And if there is an attack to happen which cause a disruption, it could impact them. It could impact their reputation, it could have a legal implication, and they can run out of business pretty soon. So it definitely supports organizations broader mission, because you need to have um, mitigations, you need to have incident response, disaster recovery, business continuity in place, in order to support the organization in continuation of their services, and also in turn helping them to help in their mission. The next one is to have a planned approach to responding to an incident. So, as I said before, if you do not have a planned approach, you wouldn't know whom to reach out to, what to do next, when to circle back to an incident response plan. And I'll be talking about each of the steps and phases that are required in incident response in the next coming up slides. And it also helps to have a clear communication plan and escalation procedures. So, what does that mean? So, for example, if there is an incident that has to happen, that has happened in your company and it has disrupted the services, people are, so for example, it's a banking company and people are unable to log in. The organization has got a DDoS attack, and the servers are down for a bit. The people have the people are in panic mode, because as you know, banking is one of the critical services that we want the people to have access to. So what does a company do in that case? And there are incident responders working in the background, uh, fighting and stopping the attack. So we need to reach out to public relations, we need to reach out to crisis management, we need to reach out to have a communication plan in place so that we could communicate that disruption of services in a clear and in an effective manner to our audience or to our customers that we are serving. We need to also have escalation procedures in place. What does that mean? So if you are alone, for example, you're a SOC analyst and you're alone working in a security operations centers, most of the time when there are so many alerts coming in, or there is like high level or critical P1 P2 coming in, you need to sometimes escalate it to your manager, you need to escalate it to the on-call incident responders. But how do you know when you don't have a plan in place whom to call out to? What are the stakeholders who could help you out during that time? It also helps you to understand the roles and responsibilities required to carry out IR activities. So most of the time in the SOC, there could be P1, they could be level 1, level 2, level 3 analysts, security engineers, incident responders working with you. Having a clear definition of roles and responsibilities in your SOC could definitely help you building a better incident response plan, because then you know whom to reach out to when you're stuck with something. Then the next one is to aid the business continuity and disaster recovery plans. So most of the time when the incident occurs and there is a disruption caused in the services, the business continuity crisis management team and disaster recovery team would need to be communicated and kept in loop. So you might be having huddles or catch ups every 15 minutes or 30 minutes, that do we need to start our recovery plans, do we need to boot up a business continuity? And they are bigger organizations which have disaster recovery in place, which is like a technical operational model which falls under business continuity. So what are the technical resources that you would require, and that should be in place when the incident happens, so that if you need to have um, fault tolerant servers in place or offline backup in place, you could definitely jump and get it online if required. So definitely when you look at incident response, it directly aids the business continuity and disaster recovery plans. Then the last one is it helps to capture the effectiveness of security capabilities and strengthen your controls. So what does that mean? Like, so there could be lots of times, and I'm sure working in security operations center or in incident response, you might have come through this particular line, that you're trying to investigate something, but you that log is not visible to you. So there could be certain controls in place. There could be some detective mechanisms in place like EDR or SIM solution in place, but you don't have proper visibility. So when you do post incident review, you would have to capture what was not visible to you and could have helped you during your incident response. So that incident response plan will also capture the effectiveness of your security capabilities and could help you to strengthen the controls that you have in place within the SOC or in the security environment. So next is which security teams use it. So as you know, there are incident response teams, SOC teams, crisis management teams, incident management teams, business continuity planning teams, and threat hunting teams that most often use it to respond to the attacks. And these are the teams that you would have. uh, you would socialize your incident response plan with, because then they could support you when the incident happens, and could help you execute the plan more effectively. Moving on, let's talk about the frameworks used to create incident response plans. So, as you can see, there is SANS 6 steps of incident response on the left and NIST incident handling framework on the right. And if you notice closely that each of these steps is quite similar to each other. Like NIST and SAN 6 steps are quite similar to each other, and they are quite often used in the organizations to plan the incident response. It depends upon your organization size, that whether they go with NIST or the SAN 6 steps of incident response. So if your organization is bigger and they have attacks coming in, have large volume of attacks coming in, then they would like to go with NIST incident handling, because it combines the detection and analysis phase and containment, eradication, and recovery phase, so that there are less number of steps, but you are able to do the same thing in a planned way. Um, NIST would be more likely faster and more consolidated approach, as you can see, and it could be used in an organization with fewer incident response resources with a higher volume of attacks. So if you have very less resources within your organization, um, and you would want you have a high volume of attack, then you would go with NIST incident handling framework. However, the SANS framework would be ideal for organizations to leverage if they have mature and well-staffed security operations and incident response teams. The organizations which are like outsourcing their SecOps component to managed services provider, uh, since they do not have qualified internal resource available to handle these tasks, they might have a SAN 6 steps of incident response working with the MSSP. And then the SANS model would also be ideal if the organization has compliance or cybersecurity uh, insurance purposes, needed a complete root cause analysis and lessons learned um, to formally report the incident to the board or to the directors. So, what does that mean? So if you have like SAN 6 steps of incident response, which is quite comprehensive, you would have to have breakdown of each of these steps, so that once when the incident response happens and you're putting your analysis, you're tracking it within the ticketing system that you would have the initial components within each of these steps, and it helps you to then communicate um, the effectiveness of your incident response plan to the board of directors, or to the CEO or to the CTO in your company. Then, then let's talk about each of these phases on a high level, because we'll be talking about each of these steps in the next slides, where we'll go a little bit more deeper into each of these steps. So, preparation phase, as you could see, and I'm referring to the SAN 6 steps of incident response, it has a steady state where you prepare, as it says, you put together all the resources that you need for an incident response plan. And then the next step is the identification phase. So identification means where you declare an incident. So there's the service desk that the call comes in from a customer, and they say, oh, I've noticed something going awkward with my unusual with my computer. I'm not sure what's happening, and they create a service request. So that's where it's called identification. So you identify there is an incident. And then the next step is containment, where you want to limit the attack, or you want to contain the attack in within the certain boundary, don't want it to scale to your organization and impact other resources in your organization, that's where containment comes in place. And then eradication phase. Eradication is removing the traces altogether, clearing everything, clearing the traces of the attack in your network. So how do you do that? For example, there are emails that have come in, which are phishing emails, and you have done the analysis, you have contained the attack. Now you want to remove the traces of that email within your Exchange server. So you will purge the emails within the Exchange server so that they are no longer there. And then you move on to recovery. So recovery is when when you put the servers back into production, um, when you start from the clean state, that's called recovery. And then you might find that you would need to jump back to containment phase within after eradication, or maybe after recovery, depending upon um, if there is a need. If you verify but you see that there are some logs that I feel are still suspicious, I need to go back and look at those and find the identity of compromise and contain the attack even further. So you will go back and turn back to the containment phase and then follow the save. So as you could see that it's a continuous cycle. There is not like a push button where you stop and you say, oh, I'm done. And then after that you have lessons learned. So lessons learned is the step where you um, put together, you review, you have like a facilitator within the SOC, which facilitates the post incident review or the lessons learned review, where you go back, review the steps and see what are the gaps that we need to address, what is the good things that we did, what are the things that we should improve upon. And that is where the lessons learned comes. On the right hand side is the NIST incident handling framework, which is also quite similar. It has preparation phase, detection and analysis phase, containment, eradication, and recovery phase, and it goes into post incident activity. So um, it's just so similar to SANS 6 steps. So I will not go into too much of details, but they both are quite similar and are heavily used um, within the organizations. Now, this is a very nice screenshot that I had captured from SANS 504 incident response cycle. You could go on the SANS website and look for SANS 504 incident response cycle. It very nicely captures the resources or the things that you would need in each of these steps. So, for example, in preparation phase, it says people, notes, relationships, policies, procedures, communication plan should be in place. And then the tools that are required, the training that you would need for your team, jump back sessions would be required in the preparation phase. In the identification phase, how do you think the people identify in your employees identify any attack, any incident in your organization? Through awareness. So we have awareness campaigns going on through cyber awareness teams that do the awareness campaigns to socialize or to communicate what's happening, what are the threats uh, that could impact your organization. And most often it's like phishing attack, because 90% of the time um, the people fall for phishing attacks, and that's why cyber awareness teams make sure that they run those campaigns to educate and to communicate those threats, so that the people could identify it and report it to the security teams. And then once there is awareness, identification is done through awareness, or could be done through your customers, third party stakeholders, your vendors could report an incident, unusual processes or unusual security events that are communicated to your service desk or to your SOC um, would be would come under identification. Coming to containment would be, containing the attack as it means. So you would blacklist any malicious hashes. Uh, you would uh, you would block them on firewall. You would block an IP address which you think the user shouldn't be, should not have outbound traffic going out to. So you would have to stop that so that there is no data exfiltration going on. You would have to stop the bleeding of the attack, or the stop bleeding of any data which is, exfiltrating from your organization. So it comes through containment, and there are various ways that you could contain the attack is through network segmentation, through using the tools which are easily accessible to you, like firewall tools, the EDR tools, endpoint detection and response tools that you have, the exchange, the webmail servers that you have. um, so these are some of the steps that you take in containment. And then eradication, so restoring the backup, or removing the traces of removing the traces of the malicious threat actor so that you could boot up the service from a clean state. um, Adding additional firewall or IDS filters, and then moving on to recovery. So sorry, I confused between eradication and recovery. Recovery is where you uh, start from the clean state, move to production, and script searches for attacker artifacts, monitor signs and events that you couldn't discover in the containment phase, and move back. Then the lessons learned would be address processes, not people. Finalize your reporting, review what was good, what didn't go well, what are the tools that you would require more, what are the log sources that you would need to have better visibility, and all of those. Now moving on to a use case, which is phishing incident response. So we'll talk about each of the phases in depth in this part, which is preparation phase. So, what does it include? Establishing the right tools and resources, training your team, and making sure that your team has the required access to the tools that you need to identify the attack, to contain the attack, and all of those steps. And you need to have the required training in place as well, because if your team doesn't know how to use those tools. Yes, sorry, yeah, I can hear you. Okay, so let's go back to the preparation phase. Um, Having the right communication plan in place, making sure that the team has the right resources and equipment, and then risk assessment has been done to identify the gaps in the incident response plan. Now, what does the detection phase include? So when we have identified the attack already, uh, sorry, it needs to have, okay. So when we have identified the attack, uh, how we, it sorry once we have identified the attack, we have prepared for it, then comes the detection phase, in where we have alerts coming in through SIM, EDR, reports coming in from your DNS, web proxy servers, or the users have reported it, or it could be coming through the third party service providers that you have, vendors that you have, and that goes into the data collection. So once you have that alert being detected, you would have certain components in phishing email. For example, you would have a URL, IP, um, and you would like to collect that data within your ticket in order to analyze it further. Once you have collected that data about your domain, whether it was spoofed, whether it's a spam, whether it has some malicious content, you would like to categorize that phishing email, whether that is a spam mail, phishing email, or a spear phishing email, a whaling attack. So it has gone to executives or sea levels, then that would be a whaling attack. A spear phishing attack would be a certain group of people with the same in the team or having the same sort of expertise would be spear phishing attack. And then it goes down deeper into triage phase, where you would triage the incident, you would look at the impact, you would start the analyzing, which falls in the next phase, and you will try to see whether it's a false positive or no, looking at the indicators that we have collected or the data that we have collected from the domain, IP, etc. Now, moving on to the analyze phase. Now we have collected and we have removed all the indicators of, false positives or true positives, etc. And that's why we have moved into analyze phase, because we now know that there's something definitely wrong. So in the analyze phase, we verify or double check the previous data and rule out the false positives again, and see if that is a critical incident. So there could be a a ransomware attack, for example, and we need to just use another playbook, or um, have a critical incident playbook in uh, to look forward to. And then we wouldn't use the phishing pre-plan. We would just have that ransomware pre-plan to refer to. Once we understand that it's not a critical incident, we will then identify the identity of compromise by looking at its hashes. Um, there are certain open source tools like VirusTotal, URLscan.io, etc., that you could use. And then once you gather all those details, you know the identity of compromise, you put it in the reference ticket, then you would try to scan using Exchange server, see how many people have actually got that email and how many people have clicked on that email. So you're trying to update the scope. After you have all this information in your ticket, um, you want your all the users or endpoints ID. That means you need to make sure that all those people who have got that incident are there in your ticket, so that this incident response is more effective. And then you start communicating to them, because you need to contain the attack and you need to let them know that this is a phishing email. So you let your users know and you move on to the next containment step. So I'm just talking about these steps on a high level. There are so many, if you go into the depth of each of these steps, there's so many further steps that you would have to take in order to um, in order to go through these steps step by step within your organization. So contain and eradicate phase. Um, so in the contain and eradicate phase, we would contain or limit the attack by blocking the email, blocking the domain, or blocking the sender of that email, depending upon whether it's coming from a spoof domain. You would have to block that sender because they're sending those spam emails to a uh, bigger group of audience in your organization, so maybe 1,000 or 2,000. So you would have to look at, okay, what is it coming, where is it coming from, and block them on the um, exchange or email servers. And then you would have firewall policies in place to limit the attack, to blacklist that IP, to block the IP. And then you move on to action taken by users. So, have they read that email, or have they clicked on the link in the phishing email? Did the malware infection occur? Did they click and execute? Was there any downloadable that they clicked on and it actually downloaded on the endpoint? And you would run a malware playbook. And if not, then you would try to delete the emails from the user's mailbox so that they don't go back and click on those links. So you would use the email admin console, delete any downloaded attachments through EDR or SIM, delete email from servers, cloud, or on-prem. And then you would close the monitoring, monitor for related incoming message, internet connections to indicator of compromise, and then come back to ID any all affected endpoints. So you'll need to make sure that there are no endpoints that are affected. If they are affected, you would have to contain those endpoints using an endpoint detection and response tool. Now, once you have made sure that you have contained the attack and there is no new IOC discovered, you would move to the recovery phase. In the recovery phase, you would update the defenses. You would see, um, okay, so I have blocked this IP in the firewall, but maybe it's required for the users to go on that IP to access that IP. So, do I need to unblock it? Do I need to unblock the URL that I have blocked before because it is required for the day-to-day activities that our employees do? So, you would look at those and also fine tune your defenses so that they work well in identifying the attack. And then again, you would look at if there is any new IOCs that have been found and all affected endpoints have been ID'd. Moving on, we will have post incident or the lessons learned phase. In the lessons learned phase, we will talk about as we had worked through this plan, there'll be incident management team, there will SOC incident responders, security analysts, and you will have a report of what are the steps that you take in each of the incident response phases, what worked, what didn't work, what could we do better, was it faster, was it within the time, within the agreed SLA, that you were able to respond to those. And then we would input that sort of lessons learned into your policies and procedures or the playbooks that you have, or maybe any automated playbooks that you have, and you've identified a gap. Oh, it did break down at a certain time. I need to fix it. I need to fix the SIM rule set that didn't detect a specific attack in a certain way. I need to improvise my IDS sensor, fine tune the rule set in there. So these sort of lessons learned could help you to better the detection rules. And then it also helps you to review the defensive posture. So you would have a scheduled review uh, of new introduced rules in 6 months to actually identify the attack more better, more faster. And then you that directly gets input into user awareness training. Oh, what can we do better so that our users could identify that phishing email better? So that cyber awareness team would then have that input coming in from SOC team to actually help them to create a cyber awareness kit or program for the organization and use it to train the employees uh, based on the incident that happened. And that's where the phase of the incident response ends. And now we'll talk about how to implement incident response successfully. So we talked about each of the phases, but how do we actually implement it? And I've been creating incident response plans for lots of customers within New Zealand, lots of big customers. And these are the facts, these are the things that I've identified based on my experience. So, first of all, you need to know your assets. You need to prioritize those assets based on the sensitivity and criticality. What does that mean? So, if you have critical servers, you would want to have visibility to those. You would want to have visibility to your DNS logs, your web servers, all those critical servers that help you to continue your business. And actually that helps in incident response, and giving the incident responders that visibility to successfully go through those steps and understand what's going on. You need to have a policy, incident response policy in place, so that people within your organization take it seriously, and understand the value of having incident response in place. So you would have to have that approval from your CISO, from your CTO coming in saying, yeah, we need to have uh, incident response in place, because it justifies in the policy that how it directly aligns to the business outcomes. Then you would have to identify potential risks, threats, and weaknesses. So every organization has a different set of threats um, that may impact their business. So you need to identify what are the potential threats and what are the weaknesses that my organization has. Identify those, make sure that you have detection capabilities in place to identify those threats coming in, to have a better incident response mechanism. Because if you don't know what are your threats in the environment, what are you looking for, then the incident response wouldn't work so well, because then you don't know how to discover them. Then the fourth one is having a structured plan to respond to the threat. So you would have to have a structure in place, right? As we talked about these steps, so we can't have containment just at the start of the identification, right? We need to identify, we need to analyze the threat in order to contain the attack. So we need to have a certain structure, uh, and then also have critical thinking, that how will it impact my business? What sort of business impact will it have? Do I need to make a decision right now to contain the attack, and getting the necessary approval, right? And then outlining the roles and responsibility of response teams in the IR policy. So if we are clear about what are the role I am playing, I'm a SOC level one. How do I reach out to, who is the person who will be owning the containment, who will be owning, um, who would be owning a server if it is taken down, whom do I need to communicate to, what are the roles and responsibilities within this plan. Then it will help you to actually reach out to the people very quickly. And then socializing the IR plan with the required teams and getting it approved. What does that mean? So think about, so a lot many times we prepare the incident response plan, we have everything in place, we have the step by step instructions, but we don't know, we have not communicated it to the other teams. The incident management team doesn't know about it, the crisis management team, the BCP team, where is it saved? Like they don't even know where have you stored that incident response plan. So you need to make sure that the incident response plan is socialized within the required teams, who might have got, who might be impacted when that attack had to occur, and get it approved from those stakeholders, so that they authorize it, they say that they have reviewed it. It makes sure, it helps you to then make them accountable to it. Now, the next one is train the IR staff through tabletop exercises and test the plan. So how do you make sure that that IR plan that you have created is effective? Through tabletop exercises. So what are tabletop exercises? Those are like the scenarios where they are given in on spot, and you need to understand the roles that each of the team members play, and what are the next steps. So it helps you to make the IR more effective within your organization by testing the plan in place, and then identifying the lessons learned and then applying it to your incident response plan. So lot many times we do have so many lessons learned, but we do not apply what we have learned through that incident response through an attack already. So we need to identify them first of all, and then we need to circle back and apply them to the policies or the detection capabilities. Don't wait till it's too late to operationalize the plan. Don't store it in your knowledge base. 90% of the times, uh, we create the incident response plans, but it's never operationalized. It's never looked by the incident responders. And that's where we miss on lots of steps. Don't save it in your knowledge base and wait for the time when you have to come back to it and look at it and say, oh gosh, I missed that step. I should have done that step. So you need to operationalize it. You need to put that in use, and then keep testing and updating the IR plan. There are digital transformation happening. There's so many technologies taking coming up with AI and lots of other things. So you need to keep on testing the IR plans, updating it based on the changes that are happening within the environment. And then the last bit, resources and tools. So these are the some of the tools or the resources that I took help and in compiling this presentation, and these could be quite helpful for you as well. I'll share it with you in the chat if you'd like, and hopefully you could create a more effective and a better plan using these tools and resources. And I'd like to thank you all for listening to me. I'll be happy to answer your questions in the chat now. But if you have any more questions, feel free to jump in and message or ask me anything. So, Angelina is asking, what's the difference between SOC and incident response? A very good question. So, a SOC is a security operations center, as you know, and a SOC is is like a smaller organization, as you could see, which has which helps you to identify, um detect, monitor, respond, and recover to the attacks, right? But the incident response is a planned approach to actually help you with the SOC outcome. So SOC would not be just incident responding. A SOC is where it's like an operational model wherein you are there to help your teams with identifying and detecting and improvising those controls. So SOC helps you to um, basically have a security program going on to in an operational context. However, the incident response would be responding to the incident itself. So they are two different things. So thanks, Angelina, for asking that question. I hope I was able to answer that question for you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to me. It was nice to be here, and keep in touch.